Unpopular opinion, but burnout doesn't look the same for everyone. Sometimes it looks like procrastinating until everything feels overwhelming, saying yes to everyone but yourself, or doing the bare minimum. Maybe you've been doom scrolling until 1 a.m. or bed rotting every weekend. We are all built differently, so it is completely normal to experience burnout differently from each other. And I would say there are about 6 different archetypes. There's the procrastinator, the doom scroller, the yes girl, the bed rotter, the overachiever, and the quiet quitter. These are all really based on my own personal experience and that of my clients. Having burnt out myself multiple times in the past and coached women who are also burnt out, I have become very good at noticing the most common traits that pop up. So let's figure out which burnout girlie you are and what that means for you. If you're new here, hi, I'm Thalia. I'm a certified health coach and the creator of Notes by Thalia, a self-development hub for corporate girls ready to bounce back from burnout and transform their draining job into a career they love. Every week-ish, I share content on burnout recovery, self-development, finding joy, and career growth. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more. So I'm going to go through each archetype in no particular order. There is no right or wrong one, no one that is better than the other. They all come with their own struggles. The sooner you identify which archetype you relate to, the quicker you can turn things around. The quicker you can stop flip-flopping between random tips you found on TikTok, tips that really don't work by the way, and actually start making shifts that do make a difference. If you want to take the guesswork out of figuring out which archetype you are, then I 10 out of 10 recommend you go and take the quiz that I've created over on my website, and the link for that is in the description below. First one up is the procrastinator. So I would say this archetype is the most common among my clients and the people who have taken the quiz already. It is very, very easy just to put things off, especially if a task is overly tedious or challenging. It is normal just to say, oh, I'll deal with that later. I do that a lot with personal appointments. I just hate picking up the phone to people that I don't know. The thing with procrastination is it's not just a burnout problem. It can happen at any time, but when we are burnt out, we are more likely to procrastinate because we use it as a coping mechanism for stress and overwhelm. The thing that I have found that works best for my clients is making each task feel stupidly simple. So you're basically creating an SOP, a standard operating procedure, for any task that feels overwhelming. I actually got this idea from my own coach, and it requires you to break down each task into the smallest step, the tiniest step possible. So instead of saying finish report, you're breaking that down to open document, add title, write the first sentence. I hope you can see where I'm going with this, but you're basically writing yourself a recipe for your workload. This next one is the one I probably relate to the most. It is the doom scroller. Signs include picking up your phone and then losing hours to Instagram and TikTok, staying up late scrolling, and then obviously waking up just as tired because you haven't fully rested, feeling distracted when you're with friends and family because you're just constantly on your phone and you're really not being fully present and giving them your best self, that quality time, and using your phone as a way to zone out when you're feeling super overwhelmed. Each of these red flags is basically me to a T, especially when I am feeling exhausted. I find scrolling the quickest way to switch off, like journaling or going on a solo walk with just my thoughts requires way too much energy and brain power. So it is generally easier for me just to pick up my phone and scroll than to deal with what's really on my mind. But obviously scrolling never really gives me what I need. I never feel fully rested because the online noise is still there. There's so many ads that are being bombarded at me. So your brain never really gets the chance to switch off. I just end up feeling even more tired, distracted, and disconnected from myself. So doom scrolling is something that I really try and avoid, but it is easier said than done. What I've started doing and what I find has really worked for me is actually replacing my phone with my Kindle. So instead of mindlessly scrolling on Instagram, I'm actually reading and probably finding a lot more fulfillment from that as well. I don't tend to put my phone in another room just because I do use it as an alarm clock, but what I do is put it on do not disturb or night mode, so the notifications don't distract me as much. I can just check them at specific times of the day. I also have a list of feel-good activities up my sleeve that I can turn to when I have the urge to scroll. These activities are usually super simple, so I can do them right there and then. They don't really require a lot of planning. So doing a jigsaw puzzle, journaling, maybe baking if I have the ingredients, calling a friend and having an IRL conversation with them. There's hundreds of activities that don't require a phone. So I suggest that after this video, you sit down and write your own master list. Next up, we have the yes girl. I think we have all been this person at least once in our life. Everyone's go-to girl. We say yes to absolutely everything. Every project, every last minute request, every after work drink, every weekend plan, purely because we don't want to let anyone down. When you're burnt out, being a yes girl can be a good quality. You're supportive, dependable, and people trust you, which is a good thing, especially if you're working in corporate. But when you're burnt out, saying yes all the time can really turn into your worst enemy, simply because you don't have the energy to keep showing up for absolutely everyone. So if you're stuck in a cycle of saying yes all the time, even when you want to say no, I really recommend pausing when someone asks you to do something. You really don't owe anyone an instant yes. Simply say, can I get back to you? This is probably like the politest thing that you can say. That's not a no. Or if you really don't want to do something, but you really hate saying the word no, then try saying, I don't have the capacity right now, but I will update you if anything changes. The Stay and Slay email playbook is the perfect tool for yes girls like you, as it includes copy and paste scripts that you can use to push back on unrealistic requests or deadlines without saying no and burning bridges. A 10 out of 10 recommend using it, and not because I created it. You get 10 plug and play email templates to use, as well as some pretty sick bonuses. The link for that is in the description below. Another favorite of mine is the bed rotter. I mean, hands up if you have found comfort and peace from lying in bed all day doing nothing. I bet that's a lot of us. We just don't want to admit it to ourselves. So this is another popular archetype among those corporate girlies who have already taken my quiz. And that's because when you're feeling burnt out from work, it is so normal to want to sleep a lot and do nothing in your downtime, to cancel plans because you really can't be bothered, or skip the gym in favor of lying in at the weekend. The only problem with bed rotting is it really does not help in the long run. Yes, you could call it self-care because it helps us feel safe. But the truth is, it just pulls us further and further away from the things that actually matter. I'm talking about our hobbies, exercise, spending quality time with friends and family, having personal goals. These are the things that are really going to make our life outside of work way more exciting. And if you spend a lot of your downtime in bed just binge watching Netflix, then you are going to lack that fulfillment and that inspiration that you really crave. If I was in your position, which I definitely have been in the past, I would find one thing to do in the evening that made my after work routine a lot more intentional. Or if it's at the weekend, find something that gets you out of bed, or at the very least sit upright, like reading a chapter from a self-development book, practicing gratitude, or even bed yoga. If you are feeling brave and want to get out, then I 100% recommend going for a walk in nature, because just being out in the open space really is therapy, and it can really help you clear those cobwebs, even if it's just for 10 minutes. Just do something that stops you from lying in bed or on the couch. It doesn't have to be long, just something simple that really does remind you that you are so much more than just your job, and you do have a lot more energy than you think you do. So the overachiever is the complete opposite to the bed rotter, and also the procrastinator and the doom scroller. It is probably most similar to the yes girl, because you still have the energy to show up, get shit done, and push through. But really, at what cost? Overachieving can seem like a strength when you're not burnt out because you're doing all the things, you're on it, you're in control, you're fulfilled. But the irony is burnout is probably triggered because you're an overachiever. And once it hits, nothing feels good enough. So you keep pushing through, you keep cramming your schedule with busy tasks and stress over the details that don't matter. And you really can't relax because you're just constantly thinking about the next thing. Being an overachiever is a lot. It is probably the most stressful one because if you're not giving yourself ample time to rest and recharge, then you're just digging yourself an even bigger burnout shaped hole. So what you really need to do is work on your mindset. I will literally never get bored of saying that because it is the most important thing. Figure out why you overachieve in the first place. What beliefs have led you to associate your worth to your productivity and how much you accomplish during the day? Because let me tell you, there is probably a reason why you keep yourself busy and overextend yourself. And it usually comes down to a limiting belief that we have picked up along the way, either from childhood, school, or a toxic workplace. Once you have figured out what is blocking you and keeping you stuck in overachieving mode, then you can begin to shift how you show up for yourself at work. Last but not least is the quiet quitter. This has become a bit of a trend lately, and it does not mean quitting your job quietly. That is what I originally thought it meant, but then I did think, well, naked quitting is not quitting naked. So anyway, you do still have your job, you're still showing up, you're getting the work done, but you've basically checked out. You do what you need to get done, the bare minimum basically, and then you switch off as soon as the day ends. And there's really nothing wrong with this. Quiet quitting can be a strength as you're protecting your energy, you're protecting your time and setting boundaries, which I am a huge advocate for. But if you do stay in this cycle for too long, it can actually be the cause of your burnout. What I mean by this is things can get to the point where they just don't excite you anymore. We spend so much time at work that it can become a habit that we quiet quit in our lives as well. You can lose interest in the things that you once cared about, hobbies, hanging out with friends, goals, and you just feel meh. There's not really another way that I can describe it. You're basically just coasting through life, existing really, rather than actually living. If you want to approach your work in this way, then that's absolutely fine. But I do recommend making sure you're building a life outside of work so it doesn't feel boring, it feels exciting. So taking up a hobby you've always wanted to try, bonus points if it is adventurous, or inviting more joy in your day-to-day life and paying close attention to the things that make you smile. If your work really doesn't excite you or motivate you anymore, you kind of want to look underneath the surface at the things that do, so you can introduce more of that into your day. If you do want to grow in your career and find that sense of fulfillment, then you really need to think about reshaping your role so it does align with your values, your passions, and your interests. Or look for something else, because if your job does not motivate you or inspire you, then it is always going to feel like a grind, and you will not be able to get out of this constant cycle of burnout. It is always going to be there. There's always going to be this feeling that something is not right. So those are the 6 archetypes of burnout. You have the procrastinator, the doom scroller, the yes girl, the bedrotter, the overachiever, and the quiet quitter. The names really do say it all, so I'm not going to recap. I would, however, love to hear which burnout girlie you are, so feel free to drop it in the comments below. I can also direct you to some tools for your archetype that I think would really, really help. If you're stuck and want to take the guesswork out of figuring out what archetype you are, then I 10 out of 10 recommend you go and fill in the quiz over on my website. It is completely free and it's super fun. It takes less than 3 minutes. You also get some tips and tricks to help you start turning things around. The link for that is in the description below. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more. Otherwise, I should see you sometime next week. If not, definitely the week after.